What is happening, everybody? How are we doing? It is Ben Morgan of the Fins Up Network. Week 10 LA Rams. And I'll tell you this, not many things scare this Miami Dolphins team more than a primetime game. I got a text from my contact with the team earlier today. Just an incredible stat. I think we all know it, but I didn't know the specifics on it. I could have easily looked it up, but it is very telling. In the Mike McDaniel era, 11 primetime games. In those games, the Miami Dolphins are 3-8. The results haven't been there. And what's been worse in front of that national audience? 3 documented Tua Tagovailoa concussions. So, yeah, it hasn't gone well, to say the least, when the Miami Dolphins have been under the bright lights. But I'll tell you what, at some point, this team is going to have to learn how to get over that hurdle. And we will have that chance on Monday in LA against the Rams. We're going to take a deeper dive into this matchup here in a second. But first, Dolphins fans, I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on this game. If you have any questions for me about this game, about the team, go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll be taking some viewer questions for this week's final preview and prediction video as well. So if you've got anything for me, you know what to do. Go ahead and get it dropped in the comments. Get subscribed if you haven't done so already. Would love if you did that as well. You guys, we will take a deeper dive in our final preview video on things about the injury report as we get a little bit more clarity towards the end of this week. But a few quick things to hit on, to take note of today. Both Javon Holland and Austin Jackson were DNPs in Thursday's practice. Obviously, Holland ended up coming back from that hand injury after missing a game, but in the process, he picks up a knee injury, which has now forced him to miss some time. And then you got Austin Jackson, who is appearing on this week's practice, or on this week's injury report, with a knee injury. As I said, we will monitor these things and everything else on the injury report as we get more updates throughout the week. But I'm guessing at right tackle that we would probably end up seeing Kendall Lamb if indeed that Austin Jackson can't end up going. And I know a lot of people out there will probably say, well, what's the status with Patrick Paul? Why couldn't he be at right tackle? I'm not saying he can't. I just don't know 100% sure in season how much cross training they've been doing with him at left tackle compared to right tackle. Regardless if it's Austin Jackson can't go, it will be Kendall Lamb or Patrick Paul. 2 other quick items to note. Patrick McMorris did have his practice window open. He is on IR. He was a limited participant on Thursday, so we will see in the near future if he ends up getting lifted from IR. Like I said, the Dolphins have 21 days to do so. If they don't lift him, he will then remain on IR for the remainder of the season, while River Craycraft, full participant on Thursday. So a little bit of an upgrade from last week. So we'll likely see him, I'm guessing, probably lifted from the IR later this week. Let's take our dive into these teams, though. We'll start with the Rams on offense, obviously us defensively. Now, we look at the quarterback, and it's Matt Stafford, a guy that's been there, done that, obviously a veteran, probably on his way to a Hall of Fame worthy career at this point in time. But through 8 games this season, he only has 9 touchdown passes. However, I say that recently, he's been heating up a little bit, which kind of coincides perfectly with getting his top 2 wide receivers back, that being Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. I'm sure you've heard of those two. The last 2 weeks, coincidentally enough, again, both wins. They've been on a little bit of a heater here recently. Against the Vikings and the Seahawks, Stafford has averaged 289 passing yards per game. Over those 2 games, he's thrown 6 touchdowns compared to 2 interceptions. Now, what's even more probably important to that, he's taken 0 sacks over the last 2 weeks. In his first 6 weeks, he ended up getting sacked 17 times. So he was damn near averaging getting sacked 3 times per game. And now the last 2 weeks, that offensive line has put up that lovely 0 mark. So guess what? We got to change that. And we got to change that against Matthew Stafford, who's a little bit of a different quarterback compared to what we've seen recently. Dolphins fans were finally not playing a mobile quarterback. We've recently seen Anthony Richardson, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. So guess what? It's time for our edge rushers to come and play. It's time for our blitzes to finally get home. We don't have a ton of sacks this year. We got to change that eventually. Because if Matt Stafford gets on a roll, we've seen it from him time and time again throughout his NFL, and especially now that he's got his top wide receivers back, and especially with how our defense has been struggling the last couple of weeks, could be looking at a shootout, especially if our offense continues to click as well. On the ground for the Rams, it is the Kyren Williams show. He has 161 carries on the season. The rest of the team has combined for 46. That includes runs by Matt Stafford. That includes kneel downs by Matt Stafford. The next guy in line, actual running back with carries, is Blake Corum. He only has 21 on the season. The thing is, Kyren Williams, he's not outright dominating production the way that he's dominating with his team's touches in the backfield. He does have 602 rushing yards, 13th in the NFL, so he's doing all right there, but he's only averaging 3.7 yards per carry. Where he is dominating, he's getting in for a 6. He's the one that's scoring the touchdowns, 8 on the ground, 2 more through the air. He's got 10 of the team's 17 offensive touchdowns this year. So while it's easier said than done, he's the primary guy we need to concentrate on defensively, keeping him out of the end zone. In regards to the Rams pass catchers, the stats that are going on the bottom line right now are skewed due to the games that were missed by Cooper Kupp and Puka and Nacua. You're going to see Tutu Atwell. You're going to see Demarcus Robinson. Those are the guys with the most yards. I think Demarcus Robinson had 5 receiving touchdowns as well. But when these other guys are healthy, like I said, it's the Kyren Williams show in the backfield. It's the Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp show in the receiving game. And Cooper Kupp may not be the wide receiver that he was a couple of years ago. He went on a crazy run statistically. 2-3 years ago, he went on like a 3-year run where he just could not be contained. The years when they ended up winning the Super Bowl. But you're looking at him, and when he's healthy, he can still get it done on all 3 levels. And then you got Puka Nacua, who, perfect compliment, quite honestly. He's a more physical wide receiver that's sort of taken on the role as like the team's top target in the receiving game, as long as he's not throwing punches like he did last week, getting kicked out early against the Seattle Seahawks. But regardless, both of these guys need and deserve a lot of attention from Anthony Weaver and this Dolphins defense. So my matchup to watch here, and I could say this every single week, but it's how's Anthony Weaver going to end up using his top weapon on defense, being Jalen Ramsey? Because we've seen him used as a blitzer more this season, obviously, especially compared to last season as well. But considering the fact that you've got these good wide receivers now, and maybe Matthew Stafford's not as mobile as these other guys that you had going, maybe we see less blitzes. Maybe Anthony Weaver wants to try to get home with 4, or if he is dialing up a blitz, like I said, maybe it's leaving Jalen Ramsey kind of out of that scenario when you do have 2 pretty damn good wide receivers, probably the best duo of wide receivers that we have seen this year, or at least over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Maybe he keeps Ramsey back in the secondary. Regardless, those matchups definitely have my eye. We'll switch things up here to the Rams defensively, the Dolphins offense. So I would say that despite, like I said, the Rams have been on a little bit of a heater recently. They've won their last 3 games. They're 4-4 on the season. Yes, they were technically sellers at the trade deadline. They ended up shipping Tre'Davious White over to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I will say that Tre'Davious White really probably hasn't been the corner that he was prior to the knee injury a couple of years ago with the Bills. Man, he was a solid lockdown corner all those years for the Bills. He's struggling a little bit since. He's still fine, but he only has a 50 Pro Football Focus grade so far this season. But regardless, he's out. He's in Baltimore. He's one less guy for Tua and this offense to worry about in the Rams secondary. However, I say that saying that there's a guy that they do have to worry about, and that is a rookie edge rusher. Actually went shortly before we picked this year in the first round. We took Chop Robinson. The LA Rams took Jared Verse. 3.5 sacks so far this season. He's also one of those guys that has been heating it up recently. 2.5 of those sacks coming in the last 2 weeks. So your matchup to keep an eye on here this week, Verse against our offensive line. If he's going against our left tackle, it's rookie versus the vet. How's he going to do against Teron Armstead? If he flips over, goes against our right tackle, is it Austin Jackson? Is it Kendall Lamb? Is it Patrick Paul? Regardless, that is the matchup to keep your eye on with them. Really having a rookie that's coming on here right now and breaking out a little bit. But Tua also needs to be aware of the safeties in this game. The trio of Cam Kinchens, Jalen McCullough, and John Johnson have combined for 7 of this team's 8 interceptions so far this season. Now, while I do say that they've been a little bit ball hawkish, I do think there are some solid opportunities for Tua. Take advantage in this passing game against this Rams secondary. They only rank 23rd against the pass. They're 24th in overall defense as well. Last week, the Rams, they played the Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith threw all over them. 363 yards, 3 touchdowns. Jackson Smith and Jigba, they didn't even have DK Metcalf for that game. Jackson Smith and Jigba goes for 180 and 2 touchdowns on 7 receptions. Why didn't they score more? Why didn't they win? Well, the problem was Geno wasn't careful with the ball. Ended up throwing 3 interceptions, was sacked 7 times. So I do think there is an opportunity maybe for a little bit of a resurgence from this Dolphins passing attack. It's been good since Tua's been back, but maybe this is the game where we see Tua get up over that 300-yard passing mark. Maybe we get Tyreek and Jaylen Waddle to both go over that century mark again for the second time this season. Would be the first time since week 1. Be nice to get a couple of scores from them as well. It's been a little lonely in that touchdown column, especially for Tyreek, who also I don't believe has scored since week 1. But hey, we got to take some notes from last week, and Tua's going to have to be smart with the ball. Can't be throwing 3 interceptions like Geno. And definitely given his history with injuries, concussions, we can't be taking 7 sacks as well. So a huge matchup for Tua, for the offensive line. On the ground, man, we have officially had it cooking lately against the Bills. 149, 4.8 yards per carry. Week before against the Cardinals, 150 on the ground, 6 yards per carry. Week before that against the Colts, 188, 4.7 yards per carry. Go back before that against the Patriots, 193, 4.7 yards per carry. Like I said, we have got it cooking on the ground recently. And you know who's looked like I'll say it, he looked like an absolute idiot on ESPN last week? Rob Ryan. Making fun of Mike McDaniel, calling him Mike McGenius, but then saying, why is he such a genius? This guy's this touted run coordinator and he can't get anything going on the ground. Are you watching? You can box score watch and realize that we've been having it go on the ground. So I guess it's my annual plea. You know what, Dolphins fans? Take information, get your information from people that cover the team. If you're looking at a guy at ESPN that's trying to keep his eye on 32 teams, guess what? It's hard. So I'm give him a little bit of it out there. It is hard to pay attention to 32 teams. But when people talk uncertainty like that about one team that they're clearly not watching on a week-to-week basis, I already got fed up for it, upset about it. You don't need to as well. Regardless, we'll end right there. But there's no reason why we shouldn't, why we would ever see a drop-off in this run game this week. The Rams are 24th in the league against the run. So while, yeah, I said that I do think we could get some fireworks from the passing game this week, that is no excuse to shy away from what's really been working in the run game. The last thing I will add here about the run game before calling it, I'm going to jump this off the screen here. The one last thing I'm going to add here before calling it quits is one thing I could think Mike McDaniel could do a little bit better job doing in the run game is disguising his intentions when Jaylen Wright comes into the game. He was in for 9 snaps last week against the Bills. He ended up getting 6 carries. I also think that one of the plays was an RPO that he could have ended up with the ball, but Tua ended up pulling it. I think, if memory serves me right. But you're looking at 6 carries on 9 snaps. Potentially almost 7 right there. If you're going to play Jaylen Wright, you got to do a better job of mixing him in on some plays where he's not touching the ball. Otherwise, defensive coordinators, they're smart. They're going to catch on to that real quick. So that's one area that I would like to see McDaniel improve on in the run game, despite all the success we've had recently. Dolphins fans, I said if you got any other questions, any other thoughts, go ahead and drop them in the comments because we've got one more preview video before that Week 10 matchup against the LA Rams. So go ahead and get them dropped in. I said, if you haven't done so already, make sure you are getting subscribed. Would definitely appreciate that. We'll wrap it there for tonight, Miami Dolphins fans. But until next time, fins up.